start off by explaining it. It's basically a video of people whispering and using different sounds to make you sleepy and to help you relax. I watch an ASMR video every night before I go to sleep, and it just really helps the stress of the day to melt away. It helps me to sleep. So, if you have anxiety or have a hard time sleeping, watching and listening to ASMR can be a really great way just to help melt the stress away. So today, what we're going to be doing is reading the Bitcoin Whitepaper together, so that hopefully as you're falling asleep or just listening to this to help with any anxiety or stress you have, you can be learning about Bitcoin as well. You know, to be honest, I've wanted to make this video for about a year, but I've been really nervous. This is my first ASMR video, and as much as I love to watch them, it feels like a very intimate kind of video to make. And to be honest, I've been a little worried that you guys will kick me out of the cryptoverse for being weird, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But I might make more white paper videos. We'll see. ASMR. So you guys will have to let me know if you like this, and maybe what white paper I should do next. Probably do Ethereum next. Before we jump into to reading the white paper, I want to show you guys my favorite thing that ASMR artists do, because I think it's so relaxing. Not everyone likes it though, so you'll have to tell me what you think. But this sound just puts me right to sleep. So, take a couple of deep breaths. Let the stress from today just melt away. Okay, are you guys ready to jump in? So here, got a white binder, of course. I really did go to not Home Depot, Office Depot to buy this for this video. Alright, I'll take a deep breath, sink in, and let's jump in. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, written by Satoshi Nakamoto. The abstract, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online using a peer-to-peer network. The network timestamps transactions by hashing them into an ongoing chain of hash-based proof of work, forming a record that cannot be changed without redoing the proof of work. The longest chain not only serves as proof of the sequence of events witnessed, but proof that it came from the largest pool of CPU power. As long as a majority of CPU power is controlled by nodes that are not cooperating to attack the network, they'll generate the longest chain and outpace attackers. The network itself requires minimal structure. Messages are broadcast on a best effort basis, and nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will, accepting the longest proof of work chain as proof of what happened while they were gone. So that was the abstract of the Bitcoin Whitepaper. And now we'll dig into the introduction next. Introduction. Commerce on the internet has come to rely almost exclusively on financial institutions serving as trusted third parties to process electronic payments. While the system works well enough for most transactions, it still suffers from the inherent weaknesses of the trust-based model. Completely non-reversible transactions are not really possible, since financial institutions cannot avoid mediating disputes. The cost of mediation increases transaction costs, limiting the minimum practical transaction size in the loss of ability, and cutting off the possibility for small, casual transactions. And there's a broader cost in the loss of ability to make non-reversible payments for non-reversible services. With the possibility of reversal, the need for trust spreads. Merchants must be wary of their customers, hassling them for more information than they would otherwise need. A certain percentage of fraud is accepted as unavoidable. These costs and payment uncertainties can be avoided in person by using physical currency, but no mechanism exists to make payments over a communication channel without a trusted party. What is needed is an electronic payment system based on the cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party. Transactions that are computationally impractical to reverse would protect sellers from fraud, and routine escrow mechanisms could easily be implemented to protect buyers. In this paper, we propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer distributed timestamp server to generate computational proof of the chronological order of transactions. The system is secure as long as honest nodes collectively control more CPU power than any cooperating group of attackers. You made it through the first page. Section number 2, transactions. Transactions. We define electronic coin as a chain of digital signatures. Each owner transfers the coin to the next by digitally signing a hash of the previous transaction and the public key of the next owner and adding these to the end of the coin. A payee can verify the signatures to verify the chain of ownership. The problem, of course, is the payee can't verify that one of the owners did not double spend the coin. A common solution is to introduce a trusted central authority or mint that checks every transaction for double spending. After each transaction, the coin must be returned to the mint to issue a new coin. The only coins issued directly from the mint are trusted not to be double spent. The problem with this solution is that the fate of the entire money system depends on the company running the mint, with every transaction having to go through them, just like a bank. We need a way for the payee to know that the previous owners did not sign any earlier transactions. For our purposes, the earliest transaction is the one that counts. So we don't care about later attempts to double spend. The only way to confirm the absence of a transaction is to be aware of all the transactions. In the mint-based model, the mint was aware of all transactions and decided which arrived first. To accomplish this without a trusted party, transactions must be publicly announced, and we need a system for participants to agree on a single history of the order in which they were received. The payee needs proof that at the time of each transaction, the majority of nodes agreed it was the first received. Section 3, timestamp server. The solution we propose begins with a timestamp server. A timestamp server works by taking a hash of a block of items to be timestamped, as in the newspaper or unsent post. The timestamp proves that the data must have existed at the time. Obviously, in order to get into the hash, each timestamp includes the previous timestamp in the hash, forming a chain with each additional timestamp reinforcing the ones before it. 4. Proof of work. To implement a distributed timestamp server on a peer-to-peer basis, we will need to use a proof of work system similar to Adam Back's Hashcash rather than newspaper or unsent posts. The proof of work involves scanning for a value that, when hashed, such as with SHA-256, the hash begins with a number of 0 bits. The average work required is exponential in the number of 0 bits required and can be verified by executing a single hash. For our timestamp network, we implement the proof of work by incrementing a nonce in the block until a value is formed that gives the block hash the required 0 bits. Once the CPU effort has been expended to make it satisfy the proof of work, the block cannot be changed without redoing the work. As later blocks blocks are chained after it. The work to change the block would include redoing all of the blocks after it. The proof of work also solves the problem of determining representation in majority decision making. If the majority were based on one IP address, one vote, it could be subverted by anyone able to allocate many IPs. Proof of work is essentially one CPU, one vote. The majority decision is represented by the longest chain, which has the greatest proof of work effort invested in it. If a majority of CPU power is controlled by the honest nodes, the honest chain will grow the fastest and outpace any competing chains. To modify a past block, an attacker would have to redo the proof of work of the block and all blocks after it, and then catch up with it and surpass the work of the honest nodes. We will show later that the probability of a slower attacker catching up diminishes exponentially as subsequent blocks are added. To compensate for increasing hardware speed and varying interest in running nodes over time, the proof of work difficulty is determined by a moving averaging target, an average number of blocks per hour. If they're generated too fast, the difficulty increases. Number 5. Network. The steps. The steps to run the network are as follows. 1. New transactions are broadcast to all nodes. 2. Each node collects new transactions into a block. 3. Each node works on finding a difficult proof of work for its block. 4. When a node finds a proof of work, it broadcasts the block to all other nodes. 5. Nodes accept the block only if all transactions in it are valid and not already spent. 6. Nodes express their acceptance of the block by working on creating the next block in the chain, using the hash as the accepted block of the previous hash. Nodes always consider the longest chain to be the correct one and will keep working on extending it. If 2 nodes broadcast different versions of the next block simultaneously, some nodes may receive one or the other first. In that case, they work on the first one they received, but save the other branch in case it becomes longer. The tie will be broken when the next proof of work is found, and one branch becomes longer. The nodes that were working on the other branch will then switch to the longer one. New transaction broadcasts do not necessarily need to reach all nodes. As long as they reach many nodes, they will get into a block before long. Block broadcasts are only tolerant of dropped messages. If a node does not receive a block, it will request it when it receives the next block when it realizes that it missed one. Number 6. Incentive. By convention, the first transaction in a block is a special transaction that it starts a new coin owned by the creator of the block. This adds an incentive for nodes to support the network and provides a way to initially distribute coins into circulation, since there is no central authority to issue them. The steady addition of a constant amount of new coins is analogous to gold miners expending resources to add gold to circulation. In our case, it is CPU time and electricity that is expended. The incentive can also be funded with transaction fees. If the output value of a transaction is less than its input value, the difference is a transaction fee that is added to the incentive value of the block containing the transaction. Once a predetermined number of coins have entered circulation, the incentive can transition entirely to transaction fees and be completely inflation-free. The incentive may help encourage nodes to stay honest. If a greedy attacker is able to assemble more CPU power than all of the honest nodes, he would have to choose between using it to defraud people by stealing back his payments or using it to generate new coins. He ought to find it more profitable to play by the rules, such rules that favor him with more new coins than everyone else combined, than to undermine the system and the validity of his own wealth. Number 7. Reclaiming disk space. Once the latest transaction in a coin is buried under enough blocks, the spent transactions before it can be discarded to save disk space. To facilitate this without breaking the block's hash, transactions are hashed in a Merkle tree, with only the root included in the block's hash. The interior hashes do not need to be stored. I don't know if you can hear that outside. What terrible timing. The groundskeepers are here working on the property. They probably come once a month. And of course, they're here when I'm trying to record this video. I hope it's not too distracting, because they could be here for a long time. Okay, where were we? A block header with no transactions would be about 80 bytes. If we suppose blocks are generated every 10 minutes, 80 bytes times 6 times 24 times 365 equals 4.2 megabytes per year. With computer systems typically selling with 2 gigabytes of RAM as of 2008, and Moore's Law predicting current growth of 1.2 gigabyte per year, storage should not be a problem, even if the block headers must be kept in memory. 8. Simplified payment verification. It is possible to verify payments without running a full node network. A user only needs to keep a copy of the block headers on the longest proof of work chain, which he can get by querying network nodes until he's convinced he has the longest chain, and obtain the Merkle branch linking the transaction to the block it's timestamped in. He can't check the transaction for himself, but by linking it to a place in the chain, he can see that a network node has accepted it, and blocks added after it further confirm the network has accepted it. As such, the verification is reliable as long as honest nodes control the network. While network nodes can verify transactions for themselves, the simplified method can be fooled by an attacker's fabricated transactions for as long as the attacker can continue to overpower the network. They're so loud outside. strategy to protect against this would be to accept alerts from network nodes when they detect an invalid block, prompting the user's software to download the full block and alerted transactions to confirm the inconsistency. Businesses that receive frequent payments will probably still want to run their own nodes for more independent security and quicker verification. Number 9. I'm impressed that you are still with me. There's only 11, so it's not much longer to come. Number 9, combining and splitting value. Although it would be possible to handle coins individually, it would be unwieldy to make a separate transaction for every cent in a transfer. To allow value to be split and combined, transactions contain multiple inputs and outputs. Normally, there will be either a single input from a larger previous transaction or multiple inputs combining smaller transactions, and at most 2 outputs, one for the payment and one returning the change, if any, back to the sender. It should be noted that fan out, where a transaction depends on several transactions and those transactions depend on many more, is not a problem here. There is never the need to extract a complete standalone copy of a transaction's history. I hope you're getting sleepy and that this has been relaxing for you. We're at number 10, which is about privacy. The traditional banking model achieves a level of privacy by limiting access to information to the parties involved in the trusted third party. The necessity to announce all transactions publicly precludes this method, but privacy can still be maintained by breaking the flow of information in another place, by keeping public keys anonymous. The public can see that someone is sending an amount to someone else, but without information linking the transaction to anyone. This is similar to the level of information released by stock exchanges, where the time and size of the individual trades, the tape, is made public, but without telling who the parties were. As an individual firewall, a new key pair should be used for each transaction to keep them from being linked to a common owner. Some linking is still unavoidable with multi-input transactions, which necessarily reveal that their inputs were owned by the same owner. The risk is that if the owner of a key is revealed, linking could reveal other transactions that belonged to the same owner. Now we are at the final section, section 11, calculations. This might be the most riveting part of the white paper, so bear with me and we'll get to the conclusion soon. Okay, here we go. Calculations. We consider the scenario of an attacker trying to generate an alternate chain faster than the honest chain. Even if this is accomplished, it does not throw the system open to arbitrary changes, such as creating value out of thin air or taking money that never belonged to the attacker. Nodes are not going to accept an invalid transaction as payment, and honest nodes will never accept a block containing them. An attacker can only try to change one his own transactions to take back the money he recently spent. The race between the honest chain and an attacker chain can be characterized as a binomial random walk. The success event is the honest chain being extended by one block. The ability of an attacker catching up from a given deficit is analogous to a gambler's ruin problem. Suppose a gambler with unlimited credit starts at a deficit and plays potentially an infinite number of trials to try and reach break-even. We can calculate the probability he ever reaches break-even, or an attacker ever catches up with an honest chain. P equals probability an honest node finds the next block. Q equals probability the attacker finds the next block. QZ equals probability the attacker will ever catch up from Z blocks behind. Given our assumption that P is greater than Q, the probability drops exponentially as the number of blocks the attacker has to catch up with increases, with the odds against him if he doesn't make a lucky lunge forward early on. His chances become vanishingly small as he falls further behind. We now consider how long the recipient of a new transaction needs to wait before being sufficiently certain the sender can't change the transaction. We assume the sender is an attacker who wants to make the recipient believe he paid him for a while, then switch it to pay back to himself after some time has passed. The receiver will be alerted when that happens, but the sender hopes it will be too late. The receiver generates a new key pair and gives the public key to the sender shortly before signing. This prevents the sender from preparing a chain of blocks ahead of time by working on it continuously until he is lucky enough to get far enough ahead, then executing the transactions at that moment. Once the transaction is sent, the dishonest sender starts working in secret on a parallel chain containing an alternate version of his transaction. The recipient waits until the transaction has been added to a block and Z blocks have been linked after it. He doesn't know the exact amount of progress the attacker has made, but assuming the honest blocks took the average expected time per block, the attacker's potential progress will be a Poisson distribution with expected value. To get the probability the attacker could still catch up now, we multiply the Poisson density for each amount of progress he could have made by the probability he could catch up from that point. Rearranging to avoid summing the infinite tail of the distribution. Alright, the rest is a lot of code that I won't bore you with. So that was the end of section 11. So now we just have the conclusion. We have proposed a system for electronic transactions without relying on trust. We started with the usual framework of coins made from digital signatures, which provides strong control of ownership, but is incomplete without a way to prevent double spending. To solve this, we proposed a peer-to-peer network using proof of work to record a public history of transactions that quickly becomes computationally impractical for an attacker to change if honest nodes control a majority of CPU power. The network is robust in its unstructured simplicity. Nodes work all at once with little coordination. They do not need to be identified since messages are not routed to any particular place and only need to be delivered on a best effort basis. Nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will, accepting the proof of work chain as proof of what happened while they were gone. They vote with their CPU power, expressing their acceptance of valid blocks by working on extending them and rejecting invalid blocks by refusing to work on them. Any needed rules and incentives can be enforced with this consensus mechanism. You guys, you made it. You made it to the end of my first ASMR video. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that it helped you relax. And I may be back with more white paper ASMRs. Let me know what you think if you want to see more of these.